Hello, everybody. Welcome back for another episode of Unwritten Podcasts with your host, Thomas Malpass. I am truly grateful for anyone who listens and comes back. Every Wednesday and Friday, I release an episode, and I plan on doing so for a very, very long time. In today's episode, I welcome you, Walter Morgan, or Walt Morgan in short, a retired 23-year Navy veteran, helicopter pilot. He retired as a commander in the Navy, which is in '05. I was also in the Navy. From the clarity of his mission to the skies as a helicopter pilot and the resilience forged in overcoming many adversities, although he doesn't like to say he went through any adversities. Walt's journey in one of unwavering dedication and commitment and finding himself. Join us as we explore his childhood influences, a sense of belonging and trying to find a sense of belonging, and the profound connection that we also talk about, connecting land and food and how that cultivated through years of his childhood actually servicing and growing up on a small ranch. From the vegan debate to community building through food and much more. Walter's insights are as diverse as it is enlightening. So join us in this amazing conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Subscribe, follow, rate, and review, and I'll see you in the episode. Peace. Welcome to the Unwritten Podcast with your host, Thomas Malpass, where we are on a mission to help the world find more purpose, passion, and peace in their everyday lives. Through deep conversations and connection, tune in because we are all on this journey of life together.
For allowing me to be a part of your conversation.
No, I welcome anybody who is even interested in my mission and reaches out and just wants to tell their story. Honestly,
Yeah.
I think that's the juice of life, and I think I think everyone has a story, but not everyone is heard or listened to.
Okay.
And
So is that you referenced your mission a bit ago? Is that your mission is for others to be heard or to feel heard?
yeah, if you really have a story that you want to tell that you think would impact somebody in a positive way, or just take something from to learn and grow and be a better person, yeah, that's the mission.
Nice. Nice. Well, I applaud your clarity on your mission and also your willingness to invest in it and to put it out there.
Yeah, man, I appreciate anybody, to be honest. And I was so grateful when I started the podcast matching platform, the Podmatch,
Yeah.
because it was like I was struggling to find guests to come on, because I had started a month ago, and all of my guests were either friends or family, and I had two that I just got lucky, I guess, from DMing on Instagram. And we had the same mission and shared the same values, and she was my third episode. And before Podmatch, I was literally just DMing like hundreds of people on Instagram and social media, and either people don't respond or some influencers with like a lot of followers, because I was trying to get some people with a following as well. They want you to pay them,
Yeah.
and I said if you need me to pay you to tell your story, then we don't align, because
Nice.
I want to provide free value to somebody. I
Yeah.
don't want to have to pay you to come tell your story when all I'm trying to do is spread wisdom and value.
Yeah. What makes a good podcast for you? Like when you think about the podcasts that you've done so far that you like the most, what is it
Ah,
that,
man. Well, I've only done about 10 so far,
okay.
but um, uh, a story of real adversity and triumph.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
those are like the best, because a lot of people they'll reach out and just like try to promote their business or something, but
Hmm.
I usually pass on those. I want to hear more of like, what did you overcome type of thing.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think those
Well,
are the best.
that will make for an interesting conversation today because, knock on wood, and I'm not apologizing for this, I don't feel like I've had a lot to overcome. I feel so blessed with what I have and the opportunities that have been provided. I think potentially a message I can share is around a willingness to continue to grow and
Yes. Yeah.
even when, right? Even when it would be easier not to, or it feels easier not to, right? A life of continuing to build our sense of service and continuing to evolve around that, even
Yeah.
when we're comfortable.
No, I think that's that's very important because uh, a lot of people tend to let life fly by the waistline. Is that what it's called? Is that a
Wayside,
saying?
wayside, yeah, yeah,
And I think what the message you're trying to bring is very important, because life is so full of moments that you can cherish, and I think life is about growth, honestly.
yeah,
I mean, just think about it. Think about when you're a baby. All you do is grow and learn, and that doesn't stop until the day you die.
yeah, yeah. Well, except for when it does, and what I mean by that is there are some people who are intentional around their growth, around their service, around their evolution, and there are some people who are stagnant, and their growth is
Yeah.
minimal and certainly not intentional. I feel very much like that's a choice, and you've clearly made a choice around that, and I believe that I have as well.
Yeah. So let me start the podcast the
Yeah,
same
let's do
way I
this.
start every podcast. Is I ask the same question and we go from there. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So take us back and share some experiences that shaped your journey of discovering yourself and how you defined purpose, passion, and pieces.
Yeah, so I thank you, by the way, for having me on the podcast. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation as well as part of your mission, um, to share impact with your audience and invite them to be impactful through their lives. Your question is a good one, um, because I think in a sense it mirrors my own evolution and my own growth. So one, where did I grow up? I grew up in a small logging town in Oregon. And I grew up on a ranch outside that town. So I grew up in a very rural area in a very small school, and I never really felt like I fit in there. It was a tough place. You know, you had to fight, right? That was part of it. And you know, I only had 30 classmates, and a lot of them have passed already. It was tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was a tough place. Some of them were actually beaten to death, right? This was a and it not tough in the y y not tough in the urban sense, but just a tough rural life
Mm-hmm.
in a town that had once been a booming logging town. And as that industry kind of changed and became more automated and looked different, um, the industry left the town behind, right? The money left,
Yeah.
and then there were the
The
people
economy.
struggling, doing
Yeah.
their best with very little. There was certainly a meth infestation that happened. So I
Wow.
grew up kind of on that transition from boom to bust, right? I was in the middle of that.
Mm.
But I didn't feel like I belonged there. I had a sense that I belonged elsewhere. I'll share now where I am in life. I very much feel comfortable there, and I feel very much feel a sense of belonging, but not then. Something else I'd share about something I'd share from early in my life is that when I was 5 years old, I drew a picture of a helicopter and wrote, "When I
Mm-hmm.
grow up, I want to be a helicopter pilot," at age 5. And if you were to go to my childhood bedroom on that ranch in Oregon, where my mom still lives, you would see that picture hanging on the wall, that picture of a helicopter. When I grow up, I want to be a helicopter pilot. So I'd say that those are two things that pushed me in a direction to want to go to college. My parents were influential in that also. I think, you know, they were both college educated, so there was an expectation that I would go to college also. But I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to go to college out of state. I wanted to get out of there. And it was the Navy, and you and I share a Navy background,
Yeah.
but it was the Navy that offered me a scholarship and allowed me to go out of state. So I ended up at the
Mm-hmm.
University of Colorado in Boulder. I live in Boulder again, and I've been here for 12 years now. So I found my way back to Boulder, but this was my first time in Boulder as a student at the University of Colorado and on a Navy scholarship.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to get out of that area, to get out of state, to get to a new place, to experience something new. And then I was commissioned in the Navy upon graduation from college, and they sent me to flight school. And then going to flight school gave me an opportunity to become a helicopter pilot in the Navy. And that's what I did for, you know, 23 years. So that
Yeah.
was, I think, a couple. And I also would have, you know, would want to honor a number of people that, aside from my family, that invested in me and my curiosity and my interest in science and astronomy in particular, that people,
Mm-hmm.
older people in the town that probably represented more of the boom than the bust, um, saw something in
Yeah.
me that they wanted to support, and I'm so grateful for them for that investment.
Well, it seems like, I mean, it seems like you did go through a little bit of adversity and discovering what you really wanted because you had enough insight and foresight to see this boom and bust going on at a young
Mm.
age? Or was it until later on that you see in retrospect?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a great observation. Um, Why didn't I feel like I belonged there is a great question.
Yeah.
What was it that I was feeling or experiencing or aware of? But I'd also
Mm-hmm.
say that feeling like an outsider, that wasn't the only time that happened, right? I think that's also something about me. It's not the only time where I felt, I don't belong here. Um, but it was very pronounced for me that this wasn't my place. But now,
Yeah.
even though I've lived in Boulder, Colorado now more than you know, any other place in my life, I still feel that my most connection, the connection to the stories, to the people, to the land, to the history, I feel it most in Yoncalla, Oregon, where I grew up, even
Mm-hmm.
though I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Yeah.
And so, and it's still a tough place. Um, and I go back to visit my mom at least once a year. Something that I would
Mm-hmm.
share some joy around is that my kids, I have a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. Um, my kids love it there. My wife is okay there, but the kids love it there, particularly my 13-year-old son. He would tell you that his favorite place in the world is his grandma's ranch. Like it just brings out something so joyful in him, which brings out
Yeah.
joy in my mom and also in me.
Well, I think there's something about just the open land because is there like a lot of land on the ranch?
It's not a huge ranch. It's more of a hobby ranch. Both my parents were teachers, so it was a place to teach us the value of hard work, Thomas. It didn't really stick with me. It made me realize that I didn't necessarily love that kind of hard work. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not totally adverse to hard work, and I celebrate it. But man, that was tough. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
a reasonably up at 5 every morning doing chores before school, coming back from school doing chores often until late at night. Never had a summer break, never had a spring break, never had a winter break. I was just kind of attached to the ranch. So it was a hobby ranch of about 50 acres. So it wasn't big, but we had livestock, and my dad was a cowboy, so we had horses and a bit of that.
Yeah, but I think just being connected to that lifestyle teaches you
Mm.
something. You know, I think you learn the value of hard work. Even though you didn't like it, you
Yeah.
learn the value of hard work at a very young age.
I think that's fair. I at least experienced it. Whatever I learned, I experienced it. I know it, right? I have some connection. I'm very intentional about what I eat at this phase of my life, and I'm very aware of this.
Mm,
But I've had to slaughter animals. I've had to cut
mm-hmm.
meat. That I have engaged in my own food processes, and and it's hard for me to eat food without understanding where it came from, right? That becomes important.
Oh
And I
man, that's
believe,
very good. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Because
um,
people nowadays take that for granted and I feel like are somewhat privileged because
hmm
you don't have to do that anymore. They're like, "What do you mean? Where does your food come from?" Comes from the grocery store. Well, how did it get there? You know?
yeah, yeah. So I will share. I've been on a bit of a kick lately. Professionally, I'm a
What?
coach, but I also hire coaches, and a coach that I've been working with lately. I hire coaches like to help me in my own
Mm-hmm.
growth, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because when I coach others and I see the impact and the transformation it creates in their life, I still want that in my life, right? So
Yeah.
I've been working with a food coach, and so I'm very, very aware of food right now as it in my life promotes community and
Mm-hmm.
family and energy and nourishment and health, but it also creates connection. It creates
Mm-hmm.
connection to to this natural system I'm part of, to the earth,
Yeah.
this is me consuming energy and I want to do that responsibly. But it connects me to the sustainability of our planet. I'm really fascinated by regenerative agriculture right now and how we can be
Mm-hmm.
better stewards of the land through agriculture. And it all starts with
Mm-hmm.
food. Just being intentional around our food sourcing, what we eat, whom we
Mm-hmm.
eat it with, how we eat it, our emotional state when we eat it. This all matters, and so I'm very, very highly aware of that. And to your point, being having experience in my own background around raising livestock and being part of that process, I think for the first time I'm realizing this is something that you've brought out in me just today. Um, I'm realizing having that experience and background is an important connection to the journey that I'm going through currently with food.
No, no, that's what I was getting at is you are very unique because I think you're the minority in this sense because so many people have never ever experienced that. All
Yeah.
they know is that food is at the grocery store and that's where I get it. I work and I pay for this food, but they've never actually like worked for the food, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like they never
Yeah.
actually made the food and I think it loses touch. Like people
Hmm.
forget where it comes from. And that's
Yeah.
where what why I know this might be a touchy subject for some people, but I'm just going to bring it up, man, because we're talking about food right now. I honestly, this is my opinion, whether you like it or not. I honestly think people who are vegans, it's are privileged.
Oh, I think so. First, I think there's a lot of privilege in food, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
privilege. Like I have privilege in my food. I talk
Mhm.
about purchasing regenerative regeneratively raised beef, right? That's
Mm.
expensive. I don't really
Yeah.
eat processed foods. So my
Yeah.
food habits are fairly expensive habits. That's a luxury, right? I have the luxury of
Mhm.
investing in my health, my connection, my social the
Yeah.
aspect. Like I
Everything.
have a luxury of investing in that because our society has, and by the way, I don't think either of us thought that this podcast was going to go in this direction, but this is great.
Yeah.
I think that our
Yeah.
society, like economically and socially, has been built around this idea of the cheap calorie. So very,
Mm.
it's very much a luxury to be able to rise above that cheap calorie. I get why people go through the drive-through at fast food, right? Life is hard. Life is hard. Dual income families,
Convenient.
both
Yeah.
everybody's scraping by. There's not time and space in our lives necessarily to prepare food, to to share it in meaningful ways that are healthy for us, that create energy, that create longevity and health. It's just not
At least
it's
not how we
not the
used
way our
to.
society is structured. So yes. So is veganism
Yeah.
a luxury? It is. Veganism is hard. There's a documentary right now, a docuseries. Have you seen
Yeah.
You Are What You Eat? I think it's on Netflix
I think
probably.
I think I seen clips of it. I don't think I've seen it though.
It basically, 30 seconds or less, it takes identical twins, people who have the same genetics, puts one on a very healthy omnivore diet, meat
Mhm.
and veggies, but it's a
Everything.
healthy diet with working out and all of that, puts the other person on a vegan diet, also a
Oh
healthy
wow.
vegan diet, working out. And over the course of 8 weeks, researchers are trying to learn what they can by taking identical genes, putting them on two healthy diets, but two different diets. And there were actually tremendous benefits in only 8 weeks to the vegan diet.
Really?
And yes, so there are probably many good reasons to be vegan. I will probably never be vegan because I love eggs. I eat a lot of eggs, but I
I
could go the
love
rest of,
Wagyu steak. Have you ever
yeah,
had like I splurged one time and bought a like $100 um like Japanese A1 perfectly marble
yeah,
like steak and it was like $100 but it was only like two servings. Like it was just
yeah.
like a small like 6 ounce serving for me and another 6 ounce for somebody else. But
And was
man,
that
when
in the
you
US
cook
that you
it,
did that?
yeah, when I was stationed out in San Diego, I was
Yeah.
so lucky. I lived in this apartment complex that literally right across the street from the apartment complex, was this like luxury beef manufacturer guy, entrepreneur guy that got international beefs and steaks and all kinds of like like the highest quality meats like shipped into that warehouse. And then
Yeah,
he had a storefront where he would just, they were like laid out like jewelry almost. Like it's just like
it's a great
pick
description. That's a
your,
very vivid description.
yeah, like pick your like $100 like luxury steak, and he had like the $500 giant like tomahawks.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, with a rib
yeah,
coming
I
out of it.
just, yeah. So yeah, I
And
don't
so
know
let me
where I was
ask
going,
you,
but
well, was
yeah.
that $100 in a delicious steak, was it a good investment?
Honestly, yes.
Your
I
smile
think
says
it
yes.
was.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course it
I think it
was.
was.
Like,
Yeah.
if we're not investing in food, the most important thing really in our lives, what are we investing in? So that's an
Mm,
example of that experience. I remember once I was in Japan, with the Navy, and same, purchased a
yeah.
Wagyu steak. We all did, like my entire detachment got one,
Yeah.
and we ate it, and then we all just purchased another one right after that because it was
What?
this life-changing
It's so good.
experience of deliciousness. And so, I'm making tough decisions around beef. Like I'm at a place right now because I am aware of the impact that beef have on our, raising beef has on our
Hmm.
planet. Like beef themselves are okay in the right densities, but there is not enough land on this planet to
Yeah.
fulfill our human
Need
consumption of beef,
consumption.
right?
Yeah.
We're willing to destroy our entire planet for the luxury of eating that red meat. And I eat
Yeah.
red meat. And so what we've decided as a family is to only eat red meat once a week.
Yeah.
And
That's
when we
good. That's
do,
kind of how I do it.
yeah, and when we do, it's
Yeah.
regeneratively raised. So we actually pay kind of like
Okay.
twice as much for the meat because we
Yeah.
know that it was raised in a way that demonstrated stewardship for the land, that helps that land recapture and sequester the carbon so it's not in our atmosphere. And as humanely as beef can be raised, because I think
Yeah.
I think we acknowledge if a calf is raised to be eaten, is there any humanity in that at all? But
Yeah.
at least that animal died on the land it was raised and wasn't put in a feedlot, right? That's what I care about.
No, honestly, I agree, and I think that's where we lose touch as well, is because capitalistic America has industrialized meat consumption, and I think that's what hurts me the most. Even though I eat meat, that's, yeah, I'd rather eat meat that was, they lived a good life or something and was treated fairly until they were, you know, cut off.
Betrayed. Betrayed.
Yeah. But I also think it's just part of life, man. Everything,
Hmm.
like, I don't want to offend any vegans. Like, I actually tried to be vegan for like 3 months and just couldn't do it. I felt like it was hard. It was too hard to get protein in, and
Mm.
I felt bloated all the time. Um, and yeah, it was just too hard for me, and I missed meat too much. But
Yeah.
um, to any vegans out there listening, I think honestly, it's just part of life. It's it's in our autonomous nature to eat meat. Are you gonna tell a lion to stop killing calves because they're carnivores? Like, no, I think it's
Yeah.
just part of life and our autonomy. So, and everything has
A-
a cause and effect.
And
So,
so yes, we evolved eating meat. We evolved eating what we could. Um, but I'd also say to the vegans out there, good on you. right? Good on you for
Yeah.
making a choice based on your moral principles. And
Mm-hmm.
and and it is a healthy diet. It really is. Um, so good on you for investing in your health, for investing in your morals, and potentially, and it depends on the vegan diet, it varies, but potentially also investing in your planet. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll join you one day, except for the eggs. I'm going to keep on eating eggs. I feel confident. But
Or
even
the
then,
Wagyus.
yeah, but maybe someday I'll leave that behind. But I certainly
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to limit my future self, right? Because
Yeah.
I am aware that I'm continually changing and evolving, and I'm not ready to put down these lines that say I'm not going to cross that line around
Yeah.
food. Like maybe someday I will. I'll leave myself open to that change or to that evolution. Um, but my sense is I might even be moving in that direction. Again,
Yeah.
I'm
Where do
already
you
dairy
get?
free.
Oh yeah. I'm trying to be dairy free. I get like I try to get the milk that has like the lactose taken out of it or like
Yeah,
ultra pasteurized. But even
I
then, I only drink milk with coffee. I
okay.
don't just drink milk.
Oh, and I grew up drinking about a half gallon a day myself, like I was a milk drinker. But but now I've discovered oat milk, and I'm pretty happy with that. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You're about to ask me another question. I think it was about beef.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah. I remember now. I was gonna ask you, where do you get it? Where do you get this high quality regenerative beef
Yeah,
to all the meat
such a good
eaters out
question.
there?
Um, so there's a lot of places. If you even just like Google regeneratively raised beef or regenerative meat, some places will show up. Sometimes they have it shipped. There's this ranch in Central Oregon, outside of Redmond, Casad Family Farms, and Kate Halfstead Casad is a real activist for many things.
Mm-hmm.
Regenerative agriculture, regeneratively raised meat, regeneratively raised leather or sourced leather. Like she is one of the most fascinating people to me. Just her ability. She's like 30, 31 years old, and she's already created a lifetime of impact. I just admire
It's
her so
crazy.
much.
Yeah.
So Casad Family Farms, you can have it shipped frozen from them, and then you ship the box back, and they'll reuse the box. I'm discovering a new regenerative, um, more at scale, which is called I want to say it's 1,000 Hills, maybe, is the name
Mm-hmm.
of it. It started in Minnesota, um, and then it branched out to 50 like-minded regenerative ranches. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be able to tell you what it is in just one second. Thousand Hills Beef is what it's called. So
Thousand Hills beef.
it's kind of a cooperative of 50 ranches that have like-minded
Oh,
approach to
wow.
humanely raised beef and regeneratively raised beef because again that this soil is what's so critical in regenerative agriculture, taking care
Yeah.
of the soil. um, there is a place in Denver that is very good about taking care of regenerative farmers and selling their product, which is called Western Daughters, owned by
Mm-hmm.
Kate Kavanaugh and her husband, and she's a real activist in that movement. And one more that ships is the Old Salt Co-op out of northern Montana. And
That's a lot.
I love their approach to stewardship and to raising meat. And I've been on their ranch, and it's absolutely
Oh
spectacular up there.
wow.
So yeah,
Yeah,
you got
that's
a few
a
recommendations for your
yeah
audience. If you're seeking
for all the meat
regenerative meat, there's
eaters.
some options. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I used to do butcher box, but I don't know
Hmm.
how the quality differs. I know they're like pasture raised, pasture finished, but
Hmm.
I don't know what the big difference is between that
Yeah.
versus regenerative.
So Butcher Box is responsible sourcing. So that was a responsible choice. So Butcher Box is one that I can recommend as well. Plus it's delivered, so bonus for you.
Yeah, I used to get like 15 pounds of uh, meats sent every month.
Yeah. And you're not doing it anymore. What changed?
Um, Honestly, just financials
Yeah.
and um, yeah, and not needing enough meat because I used to do that with my ex,
Hmm.
and now we're separated. So, but I would go back and do it again.
Yeah. Well, and that goes to what we talked about earlier, the luxury of being able to
Yeah,
live our values, right? It
yeah,
is
true.
expensive to do that. It has to be a choice. It is a luxury. But you also, brought in your ex, right? There was also community built around
Oh yeah,
food.
yeah.
And the community we build around food, I think, is really, really important.
I would agree 100% because I mean, just look at the social media foodies out there.
Mm,
Look at how
yeah.
many there's foodies that have like millions of followers, and it's just food. It's just
Yeah.
amazingly good looking food.
In all the cooking shows. So,
Gordon
you're
Ramsay.
back in the back in the 50s and 60s, there's this idea that we were going to be able to eat our meals in a pill. And that was exciting to everybody, right? Oh, we can just get all of
In
the
a pill?
nutrition we needed in a pill. Yeah, we'll just be able to take pills
Oh
and that'll
no.
that'll be exactly. Oh no. But
Yeah.
back then, that was an exciting idea. That was that was like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, this is what the future looks like because food food insecurity. I mean, there's still so much food insecurity, even in our own very, very wealthy nation. But procuring food was, consumed a lot of our lives and preparing it. But here's the thing, as you've noted, we've gone the opposite direction. Like we actually have gone in the direction of celebrating food and incorporating food in many cases. So um, it's who we are. It's who we evolved to be. Is
Yeah. And even just
it,
thinking back on the community building is like the one meal that people always share together and cherish is Thanksgiving.
mm,
But it's like, why can't we have more of that? Why can't we have
yeah,
Thanksgiving every week?
or every
You
night.
know,
Something that my family
every
does.
night.
Well, every night
Yeah,
we do our gratefuls.
yeah,
So
yeah.
every night, each member of our four-person family um, shares three things that they're grateful for from their day.
Hmm.
And so why can't every meal or every
Every night,
evening
yeah.
be a Thanksgiving of sorts for which we become aware of those blessings in our life and what we are grateful for.
Which is, it's just so important to be thankful for not only your food but everything. You know.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so, right? I think that is part of a life well lived. I think it's part of a successful life, no matter how you want to define success. Um, yeah, to be grateful for these things that we
But
have.
I did want to to start pivoting away from food. I know I
Oh
love
man,
food. We
I
all
never,
love
I
food.
never talk about food, right? Like I didn't realize I had so much. And I mean, I know that I spend a lot of time thinking about food, but I didn't know I had so much just
It's
sitting
all
there
right.
ready to go. So thank you
Yeah.
for indulging me on the food conversation.
No,
Let's
me
pivot. What's
too.
next?
Honestly, honestly. Um, no, I just want to hear more about your naval career and the how that was and the lessons you learned in that.
Yeah. So I loved it. I talked to you, I mentioned earlier that I didn't really feel like I belonged where I was before. And
Mm-hmm.
there are periods of time throughout my life where I felt like I haven't belonged. And again, that's about me. Um, the Navy was a place where I felt I really belonged. And in
Really?
particular in aviation squadrons, it
Mm-hmm.
was, I, one, was my best self there, as my best self as a pilot, as my most confident, competent, focused, energized self as a pilot.
Fire.
Like for whatever
Yeah.
reason, like that was like I always knew, like even like my imagined stories of life and kind of fantasies growing up were always about flying helicopters. Like that was just
You had a
it. That
vision.
just
Yeah.
I feel like it, and I feel like my entire neurological system was designed to fly helicopters. But it was just working with the crews and fulfilling the missions
The
and being
environment,
I just
yeah.
but then you get into the squadrons and and there's just kind of like this assortment of weirdos top to bottom in the squadrons. The pilots are all unique characters, but the sailors come from such
Mm.
fascinating backgrounds and they're there for a
Yeah.
variety of reasons and they bust their asses. They're working so hard and every day and you know it seems like every organization likes to say work hard, play hard, but I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody works harder and plays harder than sailors do, right?
Than the
Like they
sailors,
really
yeah.
take it to a new level, and I loved the sailors. I loved the people that were,
Especially on deployment.
yes.
On
Yeah, well, that's
deployment,
what, yeah,
yeah.
it's like the different services are different. Like the
Mm-hmm.
Army tends to view the world as a very threatening place, and I think the Air Force
Yeah.
does too, right? Because they're garrison forces. But
Mm.
man, for the
Yeah.
Navy and also for the Marine Corps, the world is just like this playground. Like we go into
Because you're
port,
out
we're
to sea and you
excited.
see how vast it is, you
Yes,
know? You see
let's
how
go
vast it is,
explore.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's sometimes it was a bit too much of a party, but so I felt like I belonged there. So that's the first thing. I felt competent. I felt welcomed and valued and part of something, and I loved the people. Um, so that was an important time. I definitely tried to be a West Coast sailor, right? I didn't. I made a
Yeah.
career out of avoiding the East Coast. Just
I
no
avoided it
particular,
as well.
no bias, no bias against the East Coast at all. People love it. It's a beautiful part of our country, and I just kind of
Yeah.
identified, had an affinity for the West. So I did. I actually did a lot of. I spent a lot of time in Guam and I spent a lot of time in San
Mm.
Diego. And you know how it is in the
Yeah.
Navy. I say, yeah, I live in Guam, but I didn't really live in Guam. I lived on a ship in the Persian Gulf for so much
Yeah.
of my career. Just like, all right, welcome to Guam. Now get on a ship. You're out of here. Welcome
Yeah.
back to San Diego. Now get on a ship. You're out of there. That's part of it.
Mm.
But I think I did 3 or 4 tours in San Diego, and 2 tours in Guam. So that was a big part of my experience. And so I was
Mm.
usually, looking west to Asia and to the Middle
Yeah.
East and to Africa and experiencing that part of the country. I was lucky to be on the NATO staff as an intelligence officer. So I lived in Belgium for 3 years
Okay.
and got to explore Europe a little bit in my off time. I did do some East Coast, not to offend your East Coast listeners. I love my time in Newport, Rhode Island at the Naval War College.
Okay.
So yeah, lots of flying, lots of flying helicopters and lots of deployments.
So what I did want to ask, how dangerous is it really? Because you were a helicopter pilot, and when I think helicopter, I just think like, man, those can be sketchy at times.
Yeah. So my first fleet airframe was the H-46. Um, which had a little bit of a habit of falling into the water. Its nickname was the whistling
What?
shit can. This nickname was the whistling shit can of death. So,
Oh
um,
wow.
I, I was it. Yes, it was. My belief is that there's a lot of dangerous jobs in the military, and whatever danger you face and whatever it is that you do, you accept it and you kind of laugh about it. So I'm sure it's the same, like if
Mm,
you're an Army or Marine Corps infantry, riflemen, right? Like, yeah, I'm gonna get shot, and then you're gonna make a joke about it. It's kind of that way with flying
yeah,
helicopters.
that's
We
like
used to say
military
it's not.
culture. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you kind of laugh at the
Mm-hmm.
danger, you accept the danger, it's part of it. And when it does happen, it's tragic and it's heart-wrenching. I would share that so I went on I remember at one of my deployments, um, so the way that my particular community and squadrons went to sea was called a detachment. So we didn't go as a full
Mm-hmm.
squadron. We went as a small group, take out two
Mm-hmm.
helicopters and about 28 people. Of those 28
Mm-hmm.
people, 12 were aircrew. So of the
Mm-hmm.
12 aircrew, six pilots, six crewmen. Okay. So I went on this cruise on a ship to the Persian Gulf with this team. 12 of us were flyers. Of those 12 flyers, four of us, four of the 12 flyers, a
Mm-hmm.
full third had egressed from a sinking helicopter in the previous year, right? In
Mm-hmm.
in in separate mishaps. So one of them was a young airman who had
Mm-hmm.
punched her way out of a window. She'd gotten tangled up in her cord. She escaped the cord. She punched her way out of a plexiglass window and surfaced and busted her both of her eardrums. And based on the eardrum damage, the flight surgeons determined that she was 60 feet under. She fought her way out of the
Yeah.
helicopter, and tragically that same mishap, somebody didn't make it out of the helicopter in that one, and somebody that I knew very very well and I deployed with, and that was hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm saying is, man, yes, it was part of it. Another time, there's another tragic mishap in which we lost an entire crew, and oh, his our his RSVP for his wedding
Mm-hmm.
was still sitting on my desk. Of one of the crew members that died, like four people died in that mishap, and one of them had sent me an invitation to his wedding, and his RSVP was still on my desk. I'm like, oh God, that's hard. That
I
is
can't
hard.
even
So
imagine the family. Yeah.
yeah, so the is yes, is there Is there danger? Yes. Then considering for what we do, the Navy does a very, very good job of mitigating that danger, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
something like 3.5 mishaps for every 100,000 hours flown, and that's been consistent for a few decades, right? So
That's good.
it's reasonably safe until it's not, right? And I've had some close ones. I've had to bring it back to the ship at night with a missing engine, or been part of a
Oh
crew
wow.
that's done that. It's a team. So yeah, it's a little bit dangerous, but it's also it's a joy and a privilege to be a part of.
Yeah. So after you got out, why didn't you do 30? You said you did 23. Why didn't you do
Yeah,
30?
because it was time. It's funny, one
Mm-hmm.
of the jobs when I was retiring, I made the choice to retire at 23 years of service. And remember that time there was a job that posted in the Navy that I could have
Mm-hmm.
had, which was the
Yeah.
attaché in Fiji. and I'm retiring, and my wife's like, why aren't we going to Fiji again? Like, what are we doing? And
Oh wow.
but this
Yeah.
it f- it felt time. Like I feel like I have seen peers who have spent too long in the military. Like
Mm.
to the point I have conversations with them sometimes
They
now. Like
attach
they're
their identity to
retiring.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had too much identity attached to it also, I would say, but they have an almost an inescapable identity. Like I talk to my
Yeah.
friends that stayed in for 30 now. Some of them I can still really connect with really well, but some of them I'm like, man, it's not a judgment. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But we can't really connect or communicate anymore because you've gone so far down that path, and
Mm.
I've kind of gone down another path. And you used to be fun and now you're not. That's a judgment. That's the judgment of it. But so some feel like they're too far gone, and that's okay. You know, that's their life that they're living the best that they can. I truly don't have judgment around it, but I didn't want that for
Mhm.
me. Like I didn't want to be too far
Yeah.
gone. I still wanted to be malleable enough to do something fundamentally new and to serve in a
Mhm.
fundamentally new way.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's that's kind of why I left, cuz I only did 8 years, but
Yeah.
that's why I left. I knew I just wanted to experience the Navy, and
Hmm.
I knew there was more for me when I got out. And I
Yeah.
think that's um why even if you do 30, I think you shouldn't attach too much of your identity to any one thing. And this is common with like professional sports players where
Hmm.
they're in professional basketball or football for 10, 15, 20 years, and they don't know what to do with themselves when they get out,
Yeah.
or they
Yeah.
blow all their money and are bankrupt, or they fall into depression because that's all they knew. But life is more than your past, and you have to know that you as a human are a full spectrum of things. You're not
Mm.
just that one thing. You're more than that, and you can learn and grow and be a new person every day.
No, I think that's some real wisdom that you're sharing. It's funny you mentioned basketball. I remember when I was in Brussels, there was a guy that worked at the gym on the Garrison there that was a former European pro basketball player, and you bump into those guys all the time there. Like people, like I remember my first day in, I was picking up my car in Brussels, and the
Mm.
guy that was like checking me in on the car, I looked at him, I'm like, McCants? Are you Willie McCants? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, man, you were a center at Purdue in the late 80s. I remember you there. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing here? And he's like, yeah, no, I had a European pro basketball career, and this is what I do now. And I'm like, ah, so you see these guys around. So same thing with this
Yeah.
guy at the gym, you know, Big Will. So Big Will had been a European pro, and he'd outgrown that. But I remember this
Mhm.
was actually a powerful conversation in my life. So if you're out there listening, Big Will, this was important for me. So I
Mhm.
asked him, like, hey, man, there's a lot of former European pro basketball players that have kind of hung around, and a lot of them are here in Brussels. They're right here in Belgium.
Mhm.
Like, do you ever get together with those guys? And Will said, no. That was, I tried it. And he said, all they want to do is talk about their past life, and
Mm.
I'm too busy working on this life.
Yeah.
And
Being
that
in
was
the present.
important.
Yeah.
Yes. And that was important for me because I had way too much identity wrapped up as a pilot and as a commander, right? Like Commander Morgan the
Yeah.
pilot. Like that's who I was. That's what my identity was. And it was hard for me to separate. And partly because of that conversation with Big Will, I made a very, very intentional choice not to fly anymore. Like I needed to
Mm.
separate, and I loved flying. I was passionate about flying. I hope that comes through to you and to your audience. Like that was really important for me, and it was important for me to move on to something else. So I haven't flown at all since the Navy. I'm thinking I'm probably ready again. It's been 7 years since I
Leisure, like
retired.
leisurely. Yeah.
Yes, maybe I can go fly and find joy in that, but I needed to intentionally separate myself from that identity. So to your point, I could create something new that found purpose and fulfillment. And a lot of my squadron mates are flying in the airlines and having very, very satisfied, fulfilling lives doing that. But for
Mm-hmm.
me, when I thought about going to the airlines, I just kind of felt like I was just gonna like plateau, living in the shadow of
Yeah.
my former self and just kind of waiting to die. And
Oh man,
again,
yeah.
that doesn't apply to my other squadron mates who are doing great, but for me,
Yeah.
it really felt important to find something fundamentally new.
I mean, I think that's just like you just have to try new things, you know? I mean, like if you can do it forever, I mean, props to you, but I think there's just something about trying new things that allows you to experience a different part of yourself that
Yeah.
you might not have given the chance if you've never experienced something new.
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think it's critical. I think a willingness to step into discomfort is how we grow and how we become better. And it begins with that willingness.
So, what are you doing now?
Yeah, so now I'm a professional coach. I'm an integral coach. Um, what I didn't share is my last 4 years in the Navy, my last 4 years of active
Mm,
duty. The Navy sent me to my alma mater, sent me to the University of Colorado in Boulder. And part of my job here, even though I was active duty in the Navy, was as an associate professor teaching leadership. And
okay.
leading up to that assignment, I thought I had leadership figured out, right? The Navy gave me teams, they gave me a mission, and I worked with those teams and supported those teams and invested in those teams. We got the job done. I was, I think, nice to people for the most part and built relationships and supported development. I'm like, all right, I got this leadership thing figured out.
Yeah.
And only when I started teaching leadership at the university did I realize that this was a far bigger, more complex thing. Only then did I realize how limited I was in my understanding of what leadership is and how
Mhm.
incomplete I was in both my understanding, but also in my approach and my myself as a leader. So
Mhm.
that became like an important 4 years of my life of just expansion. And I will never learn what there is to know about leadership. I will just keep growing, but
Yeah.
it's just too big, beautiful, and powerful to fully, comprehend. I just keep studying and practicing.
Yeah.
So that was an important period of my life. So now, after 4 years of teaching leadership as an associate professor, now I decide to retire from the Navy. And
Okay. Yeah.
and at that time, I was at a crossroads. Do I go do what I'm supposed to do? And we've already kind of touched on this a little bit. Do I go to the airlines? That's what I'm supposed to do. Do I
Mhm.
go into defense contracting or consulting? That's what I'm supposed to do. And the other side of that is to go do something that nobody knows who I am. Like if I go into defense contracting, they're like, "Hello, Commander Morgan. We know exactly what your career looked like and who
Mhm.
you are, and we think this is a good fit for you. Here's your desk.
Mhm.
You sit there until you die." And then there's it's a recurring morbid theme for me. It's just like plateauing
Yeah.
until I die. Um, or I could do something new. And I felt this like this nudge from this universe. I felt this voice that said, "You are supposed to go into leadership development." Like, okay.
Mm.
So I branded myself as a leadership development specialist on LinkedIn, sent out 1,000 resumes, applied for 1,000 jobs. Nobody was interested. I
Yeah.
remember one conversation where I'd like circled back after applying for a job and I didn't get an interview. So I circled back to the hiring manager, said, "Hey, I didn't get an interview on this. Help me understand so I can be better." And like, what
Yeah.
what was missing? And I remember she said,
Mm.
"Yeah, this is a leadership development position. You were in the military, and there is no leadership in the military. People just do what they're told." I'm like, "Okay,
Oh
thank you for
wow.
sharing that." Um, and and I don't think
There's
that's a
some truth
commonly
to
held.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, how so? Say more about that.
There's some truth to that. Um,
Oh, people doing what they're told.
yeah, I mean, like, for example, I was lucky enough to get out during the COVID crisis, and um, I got out a month before they were basically forcing people to um, get the shot, the
The vaccine.
what's it called? That's
The
yeah, it's
vaccine.
losing me here.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're forcing people to get the vaccine, and you had to sign a page 13, and if you didn't, then you'd be disobeying a lawful order, and they have the right to kick you out.
yeah.
And that's what I meant by there's some truth to that. That
Yeah, well,
you just
yeah.
do as you're
People.
told.
It's the military, you do what you're
Yeah.
told, but an alternative perspective. So you were in OS. By the way, I haven't thanked you for raising your right hand and serving something larger than yourself. Like I am grateful for your sacrifice in the defense of our Constitution.
You
Um,
as well, man.
thank you, my friend. It's good to be here with a fellow sailor. Um,
Yeah.
so, oh,
Get the
were
vaccine
you
doing
did
as
you
you're
do a
told.
deployment? Did you do a deployment on the carrier at all?
Man, I wanted to, but I was stuck on a small boy uh, for my whole sea duty, and then I was stationed
Yeah.
at TPU, the easy TPU life
Oh
for
yeah.
my last. Yeah, it was.
The one
Man,
in
it
San
was.
Diego on 32nd Street?
Yep, it was.
Oh, yeah, I know that one. I got processed
It
through
was
there on my
chill.
way to Afghanistan.
Yeah,
So,
it was chill.
yeah, no, I remember your team. Um,
Yeah.
so so let's talk about the carrier really quickly though. On the
Hmm.
carrier, there are roughly 5,000 people scrunched into a really small space. The average age of the sailor of all those 5,000 people is around 20 years old. And then you've got multiple nuclear reactors on board. You have a lot of ordnance with a lot of explosive tonnage on board. You have over 100 aircraft. And then when you're doing a landing, a recovery cycle, and everything's going well, you're landing a jet on that flight deck every 19 seconds. Every 19 seconds, a jet is hitting that wire, getting released, and then pushed across the white line, and boom, the next one hits 19 seconds later.
Hmm.
This is all happening in an uncertain threat environment in which that ship is facing sea state, weather, multiple threats, and then working in unison with the small boys, as you referenced, for submarine defense and air defense and all these things. That is a deeply it's unbelievable that we're able to do that, right? Just
Hmm.
unbelievable. And every service has that same story. Like the Army, Air
Yeah.
Force, and Marine Corps all have this their own version of that story where it's like just jaw dropping
The
that we're
mission,
able to
yeah.
accomplish that. I don't know how you don't accomplish that without leadership, right? I don't know how you
Yeah,
accomplish
that
that
is crazy
without,
that she said that. Yeah.
yeah. So, at any rate, eventually I got pulled in on, I did get a corporate job with the Fortune 200 healthcare company. It was an unbelievable experience, one that really stimulated my emotional and spiritual growth. And what I learned during that time is that I had been emotionally and spiritually negligent in my life for decades. And re-engaging
Mm.
with that created a very, very steep and important journey in my own self, in my own life, and also what I was able to offer others. And so coming
Yeah.
out of that, so, and that company sent me to Integral Coaching Canada, which is a coaching certification based out of Ottawa. And that's the next thing that changed my life. When I became an integral coach, I knew
Mm.
immediately that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So that's
Next.
what I do
Yeah.
now. I coach humans on their journey. I help them discover what is the thing that you would like to better be able to do in your life. And it's usually
Mm.
it was always something about them. Like I'd like to better be able to connect with my own wisdom with confidence so I could establish firmer boundaries. Or I would like to better create warmer relationships so that we can build teams to address strategic challenges. I would like to better trust and delegate, to my team. Whatever it is, I would like to better be able to communicate my best intentions so people trust me. Uh, Every single one of my clients has a different topic, but whatever
Mm.
it is, whatever is most important to them, in about 6 months, we transcend that behavior so that they're able to do those things in a
Mm.
sustainable new way for them. So that is the work that I'm doing. Uh,
Do you
seven
work
and a
one
half
on
years.
one, or is it
I do
like team based?
primarily, I do team coaching, but most of my work is one-on-one coaching. That is what I love. That is how I serve.
So I had
That's what I do.
follow up questions to that.
Yeah,
First, I wanted to ask, what do you think makes a good leader? And then
yeah.
I want to know the process of how you coach these people and the transitions it takes to, I guess, enact like real change and growth.
Yeah, yeah. Those are great questions, Thomas. The first one, what makes a great leader? Well, one, we have to understand what leadership is. So I will share with you how I define leadership. This doesn't have to be how you define leadership. This doesn't have to be how anybody else defines leadership. This is just simply how I define leadership. I define it as the process of turning our best intentions into impact. So
Mm.
So I'll say it again, the process of turning our best intentions into impact. So when you say what makes the best leader, I would say somebody one who is attuned to their best intentions, right?
Intentions,
Somebody who
yeah.
can really look inward and understand what is right, what is true, what is meaningful, right? Those are where their
Mm.
best intentions. So one important leadership skill is just to be able to look inward and know ourselves. The
Mm.
second thing is to be effective in processes that allow those best intentions to come to life and become impact. So I would say the best
Mm.
leaders are the ones that can take their best intentions and make this really clear path to what their impact is, right?
Mm.
And to make
Yeah.
create measurable results. So,
That's really
um,
good, yeah.
oh, good. I'm glad
That's
so.
really
That's
good.
what.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about moral courage. It's about taking action on the right things. A lot of people take action on things that may or may not be right, but knowing that they're taking
Mm.
action on the right things, um, and creating impact through other people to outcomes that matter. Like when I talk about regenerative agriculture earlier, um, those people who are maybe taking the hard path to
Mm.
agriculture, those are leaders.
Mm.
They're creating impact, like
Yeah.
in the health of others, in the health of the soil, in the humanity around raising animals, around leading a movement. To me, that's what leadership looks like, is the moral courage to do the hard thing to make the world a better place, based on our own values and our own truths. So that, I hope, answers your
I
first
agree.
question. Yeah, good.
No,
Good, good, good.
I agree. That's to be intentional, accountable,
Hmm.
and to and be humble and
Yeah,
just I don't know, lead by impact, lead by example, and being courageous enough to do the hard things, do the
yeah,
things that a lot of people may be afraid to do.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
you and I are
that's good.
completely aligned on that. So I think that's what leadership is. It's different than management, right? Management's just being effective at doing what you're supposed to do, which is fine. The world needs
Yeah,
good
yeah.
managers. The world needs good leaders. The world needs good managers. And in a perfect situation, it's the same person, right? The same person is a good leader and a good manager, right? It's
Mm,
that's ideal, but I
yeah,
believe that those are different things. Those are
different.
different skill
Yeah.
sets. So then your next question was around the process of creating this, and it's a deep process. So I'll try to keep it pretty simple. Know
Okay.
that I have studied and practiced integral coaching for years, but it goes something like
Mhm.
this. It goes through an in-depth conversation, first of all, about what is most important to you. What is it that you would like to
Mm,
change? What is it that's getting in the way of your impact? What is it? And why is that important to you? And that reveals something. And if you could change this, then what would change? Like kind of understanding all those things to where we get to a really, really clear, crisply stated topic. This is this client's topic. Usually takes about an hour and a half to get there. And then once that topic is named, the entire coaching program shifts to support that outcome. Everything from there will be about
focused.
getting to that,
Yeah.
achieving that topic to better be able to do this important thing in your life. And then the program operates, coaching for me operates below the behaviors, right? We're highly attuned to the
Okay.
behaviors. But really, where the change is made is in the beliefs below the behaviors.
Yeah.
All of our behaviors are driven by beliefs that we may or may not be
Mhm.
aware of. So kind of so over about 6 months, there's a lot happening, but it falls into two general categories. One is illuminating what is currently believed and building a relationship with it and understanding it, and so that's one thing that's
Figuring
happening.
out. Yeah.
Illuminating what's there, right? But
Mhm.
that's not enough because yeah, now you can see it. And I'm like, oh yeah, now I can see it. I believe that if I achieve enough, that I'll be enough, but it's never enough, and I never feel like I have any value because and I have to keep
Yeah.
achieving. So if I don't feel like I'm enough, then I have to go achieve more and get a new
It's a
title, and that's
cycle.
driving
Yeah.
me. And it's right, whatever it is for, it's different for every person. But one part is illuminating that belief system. I believe that if this, then this, and that creates all these behaviors
Yeah.
that aren't productive for me. The second part is practicing a new way. So now it's like, okay, what is the belief system that would be productive? And then practicing
Mhm.
that belief system and absorbing that belief system. So it starts off kind of in the head, if I believe this,
Mhm.
then, and there's a way to do it, and I use metaphors a lot in the work, but really what it boils down to is, okay, moving this idea of this if then belief system from the head down into the body where it becomes
Mm.
part of our very fabric and being. And once that happens, the behaviors that weren't possible before suddenly just become organic and they just start showing up automatically. That takes about 6 months.
Yeah.
I call it transformation, but suddenly there's just kind of a new approach to things that were hard before, and where we didn't have choice before in certain behaviors, we gain choice in certain behaviors. So that's the
I think
work, but it's life changing.
that's yeah, I love the work you're doing, and I think that's the misconception behind the buzzword manifestation, and
Mm,
people don't understand it, but that is manifestation. Your thoughts, it begins with your thoughts, and then your beliefs, and then your habits, and that's what it takes to achieve. You have to
hmm.
start believing in it, so that when you start believing in it, you actually start doing the work it takes. And
Yeah, it's
then,
not just the vision
yeah.
itself; it's the
Mhm.
journey around that vision that brings it to truth. And it's almost impossible to do this on our own. It is. That is the power of coaching, to have a
Mm.
partner. Like when I show up for a client, I don't tell them things.
Mhm.
I reflect things, I offer things, I listen very, very deeply, and then create inquiry that allows their
Yeah,
own wisdom to
to
emerge
get
to
them
the
to
surface
think.
for their
Yeah.
own awareness. But these aren't questions that they're going to ask themselves, and these aren't questions that other people are asking. But this is the inquiry that's going to drive important awareness and
Mhm.
create the change. Like I know when
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
asked the right question because there's a look.
Like a
It's
light
we'll
bulb.
call
Yeah.
it, or it's almost a stunned look. Sometimes the jaw drops and they look to the ceiling, and I'm like, okay, let's just sit here, right? Something powerful is
Yeah.
happening in their own awareness or in their own processing. So I'm just gonna be here and be available while they sort through that.
I think that's honestly, to me, that's where it all began for me. Once I started to become self-aware, and how everything affects how everything I do has an effect on the world, basically.
Hmm.
And it all started when I started meditating, uh,
Yeah.
when I first started shore duty. I got into,
Okay.
have you heard of Headspace?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah,
The
that was
app
my first,
based
yep,
meditation. People
that was
love
the first
Headspace.
one. Yeah, that's what
Nice.
got me into the whole self awareness,
Good.
mindfulness, spiritual, emotional journey, and what led me up to this now, to what I'm doing, was all it all started with like that. Like first I just wanted to make money and start businesses and get into
Hmm.
real estate, but then like I looked deeper into what I could do as work that I find fulfilling and that I could do forever.
Yeah.
And it led me to this.
So you looked inward,
Mhm.
identified your best intentions, and you're in process to turn those into impact. So
Yeah.
this is your leadership journey.
Yeah, but it uh it's a daily journey, man.
Hmm.
I always tell people it's a daily journey. It's not like there's never a point where it's like I made it. I'm good now.
Yeah.
I mean, you can feel like that at times, but honestly, it's a daily journey.
And if you ever did achieve that, what would the point be, right? What would the
Right,
point
right.
be
It's
if there
like,
wasn't the
yeah. It's the pursuit
here's
of
something,
happiness, yeah.
or the pursuit of impact, the pursuit of
Mhm.
something. Like,
Fulfillment, yeah.
yeah, what is happiness? Happiness is an elusive idea.
Yeah.
Um, Something that I often share is that with my hope is that with my last breath, with my dying breath, I'm able to look back on my journey and see those mountains that I've summited, and to be able to honor that that
Mm.
journey, but I also hope that I'm able to look ahead to the next mountain that I didn't summit, the one that I didn't make, and
Yeah.
be at peace with that, right? Because the journey
Yeah.
never ends. There will
Yeah.
be things we don't summit, there will be things we don't complete. And that's the beauty of it for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
is that
It's the journey. Yeah.
we are where we are
Yeah.
in the journey, and wherever we are, I think, is is a beautiful place. It's where we are. So let's honor
We
this
have.
place we
Yeah.
are. Let's
Mm.
honor this place that we've been, and also have this desire to grow. That's that's to
Mm.
me a beautiful life.
Nah, you hit it. You hit it on the nail, man. If we could end right there, I would end right there. But I will lead into my final questions though, because that was literally like I could that was a mic drop right there. I'm gonna clip that.
Thanks.
But that I will lead into our final questions. Um, but I appreciate everything we talked about, and I think this conversation was very interesting and insightful. And honestly, I think my audience will appreciate it.
Oh, good. I hope it is useful to you. I hope it's useful to your audience. It's been useful to me. So I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm grateful for your wisdom.
All right, my final questions are I have 5 questions. The first one is, what is your biggest regret in life, if you have any?
Hmm. I mean, in the idea that we just talked about, that it's all a journey, and wherever we are in that moment is a beautiful and powerful place. Um, no regrets in that regard. Um, and I wish I had started being intentional about my leadership journey sooner. I wish I would have started at a younger age to really, like, military service is called service, but it was a little indulgent and selfish the way I approached it. So I
Mm,
wished was more willing to sacrifice when I was younger. And it all led to this, right? It was all
yeah, yeah.
part of it. So I wouldn't call it a regret. But if I was able to go back with the wisdom I have now and do it differently, I would have sacrificed more younger and been more intentional about my own
No,
growth.
that's a good answer, man. And it's honestly, I asked this question because it's kind of a trick question. Because to me, regrets are your lessons that you learned,
Yeah.
and we have we often have no real regrets because you learn something out of every regret.
Yeah, and I'm still learning. Even the thing I shared, it's
Yeah.
not like I've gotten it figured out. It
Yeah.
still saddles me. It still plagues me. I'm still growing through that. So, but yeah,
Yeah, until the day we die, man. If you're not growing until the day you die, you're dying and digging an early grave, to be honest.
yeah.
As harsh as that may sound, but that's just the truth.
Well, that's
Um,
the it's what I believe for my own life. Other
yeah,
people find their own way, but you and I agree on that. Like, for my own life, growing is the important thing.
yeah. All right, question number 2. Who or what has made the biggest impact in your life so far that makes you who you are?
Hmm. Yeah, the who or what. I mean, I think I really have to honor my spouse here. Like, we've been married for 21
Really?
years, my wife and
Yeah.
I, and marrying someone who is such a great partner in this journey, was such an important, I guess, choice. Grateful that she agreed to
Yeah.
be to kind of weave her life into mine, and then what resulted is really important around our kids, our family, and and our dog Hank, who's sitting back there, right, sleeping through this whole experience. Yeah, that's I would say my partner, my wife.
Well, now you gotta share this episode with her when it comes out.
Yeah, she, the last thing she wants to do is listen. She listens to me enough. I think she'll be
Nah,
okay.
that's sweet, man. That's heartwarming. Honestly, I'm still looking for that person
Yeah,
in my life.
yeah. And I think it's okay if it's a patient journey, right? We can't have that in our life unless we're okay with where we are in our journey without them, right? Like so, it's
Yeah, yeah,
if we approach it like I need this to
yeah.
complete my journey, I don't think it works. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
I'm on a beautiful journey and I would love to share it with
Share it
somebody
with
who's
you.
also on a beautiful journey. Um, but
Yep.
we have to be confident in this, or I think it's useful if we're confident and established in our own journey, and then it just makes it that much
Oh
more
yeah.
beautiful.
No, this is like a reoccurring theme on, on my podcast, I guess. But I always say you have to have two whole people
Yeah,
to
well
be
said.
together. You can't be two
Yeah,
halves. You can't say I need somebody to complete me because it goes back to the that cup overfilling metaphor where you need to fill your own cup first to share it with other people.
yeah, I think that's really well said, and I think that's an important idea.
Yeah. But my next question is, what is one lesson you learned the hard way?
Mm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I think, boy, the pause is just really about me thinking about the hard days, right? The things that are just like that was a kick in the gut. That was hard.
Mm,
Um, and I think the learning is that power is power, and the institutional powers that are out there have the advantage.
mm,
And if I want to be disruptive, if I want to make things better, I'd also better be prepared to get kicked around a little bit when
mm,
challenging those powers that be, and I'd probably better be okay with losing some battles along the way, because there are powerful forces out there that are going to win a lot of the time, and it's okay to keep fighting and to keep losing, right? And there's going to be some dark days, and you're going to get blindsided a
yeah.
couple of times, and it's worth it to fight the battle and try not to take it too personally.
What comes to mind when you said that is that what is that saying where it's like the battle is lost but the war isn't or something? Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah. Lost won the battle or lost the war, right? Like you're focused on this one tactical exercise, but you lose the bigger point along the way. Or conversely,
Or vice
be
versa,
willing,
yeah.
yeah, conversely be willing to lose that battle for a larger outcome. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I I feel like a couple of times like I've lost the battle. The jury is still out on the war, but I've definitely lost the battles, and I try to dust myself off and not take it too personally. But just knowing that, yeah, if you're going to disrupt this world, connect with your best intentions and try to make a powerful difference, there will be forces that resist, and those forces do have power, and that makes for some hard days. And accepting that, I think, is important.
I think that's the hard thing for me because it's all new to me. This
Mhm.
podcasting and um, I know I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I know that when you're trying to do good, no matter how good you can be, there's always going to be like at least in the podcasting world and content creation world, there's always going to be those haters, you know, and you
Yeah,
can't let those haters bring you down. You can't give
yeah,
them the power.
and it's hard not to, right? It's hard not to, but
Yeah. Mm.
I have certainly pissed some people off along the way. Sometimes they were right, I was wrong. I'd say that's the biggest lesson. Like
Mm.
if we want to
Yeah.
distill this to one lesson, is just getting over my need to be right about anything. You know,
Mm.
I have an Aunt Tony who used to say, Aunt Tony usually gets brought up in podcast conversations. She's important in my life. But Aunt
Yeah.
Tony used to say, Walt, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I would respond, yeah, I
Mm.
don't distinguish between those two things, right? For me, being right
Oh.
is being happy. But, you know,
Okay.
some 30 years later, I don't need to be right anymore. Like being right was getting, needing to be right was getting in my way. And if I
I
can
think
just
yeah.
sacrifice my need to be right, to be to be open, to learn, to move past stuff has changed my energy in life, my energy in relationships, my energy in impact and what I can accomplish.
Mhm.
I don't need to be right anymore. And that was
Mhm.
a hard lesson to learn time and time again, just holding on with energy that's need to be right.
It's
Like what was that
humbling, yeah.
accomplishing? Yeah, and it was the opposite, you know, needing to be right is the opposite of humility, right? So just
Yeah. Yep.
sacrificing that need, it's not about me, allowing it to always be about something bigger, um, is it has been a critical learning in my journey.
No, yeah, that is something I'm still working on as well. But it
Yeah,
can really having that mindset can really affect your relationships, especially your like significant other type of intimate relationships. Because what if you have two of those same types of people?
yeah,
That's just a
no, that
disaster.
it's volatile, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, no,
it's
that
toxic.
is,
It's toxic.
yeah, yeah, it's yeah, needing to be right is a
We have to
it's an
let it go, you
insecurity
know.
of sorts. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's something. It takes practice. It's a gift.
but no, I'm really glad that you shared that. Um, but all right, next question. Um, what would you want to experience in life if time and money was not an issue at all?
Space travel, maybe,
Space travel.
right? Yeah, like
Like how, what kind of space travel? Like just going up into the atmosphere or like thinking like futuristically like
yeah, futuristically, right?
SpaceX, like
Something
Elon Musk.
interstellar, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just because in this case time is not an issue. You've just given me infinite
Oh
amount of
yeah.
time, which is what it
That's true.
takes. That's really what took me there, right?
Yeah.
The limitation on space travel is we just don't have time. You know,
The
it's
advancements, yeah.
it takes so. But if I have an infinite amount of time, I'd certainly be curious to know
I
more
think we'll
about our
get there.
universe.
I
It's
think we'll get there.
yeah, of course
Yeah.
we'll get we'll get somewhere.
Definitely
Um,
not in our lifetimes.
but time. So yeah, I'm certainly curious about that. I watch the movie Interstellar way too often. Um,
I love that
so
movie.
I'm just I do too.
I
I think
loved
it's
it. Yeah.
my 13-year-old son has become a Christopher Nolan fan, so I'm getting to go through the Christopher Nolan
Oh,
movies through his eyes now. He's really, really
yeah.
smart about, he really gets it. It's amazing, actually. We watched Oppenheimer with him the other night when it was 12
I
below
still want to watch it.
zero
I
here in
haven't.
Boulder. That's good. It's
Yeah.
good. It's Christopher. I love him. So anyway, that's the first thing that came to mind for whatever reason. And it would be painful and horrible, right? We have the most convenient, cozy little spot for our species right here. Like leaving it would be mind-numbingly boring and all those things. And what could we learn? What could we know beyond our atmosphere, beyond our gravitational pull, beyond our solar system?
Man, it's
But it,
just this is another podcast in and of itself, but I I'm equally as fascinated because I mean there's like conspiracies out there saying like the UFOs already have that type of technology where the gravitational pull there's like some type of energy which is like top secret or something that we have that we you can create like it's hard to explain, man, but it's like I heard it on Joe Rogan. He was talking about it, and he had like he was talking with like the a guy that used to work in Area 51 or something, and they were trying to explain it, but simply put, it's like this energy field that can create its own gravitational pull,
hmm
in which it can pull itself by itself into like any location. And I think
hmm.
that type of energy is what is required to space for space travel. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't
yeah, and can we really imagine? Can we really imagine what's required? You know, it's
yeah,
it is technology that will evolve and build upon itself. I remember back when I was in flight school, my roommate and I were talking, and the CD changer was the big thing. All right, so we listened to our music on CDs, but we had CD changer, and that was the new technology, right? And so we
yeah,
said, okay, what's next? After there used to be the reel to reel, and then there was the 8 track, and then there was the cassette. There was always vinyl, right? But now we have CD and
hmm
CD changer. We've reached the end of what's possible, right? We have everything that's possible now because we have CDs and CD changers for music. And like, what's next? And we came up with smaller CDs, right? Nowhere in our leap of brilliance were we able to get to the place where we said, "Oh, we're going to have we're going to have phones, and on those phones we'll be able to pluck any song, album, playlist we want out of the atmosphere, and it's just going to play on the phone." Nowhere could we even imagine not
yeah.
having, the music on something uniquely
The cloud.
physical.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so the answer is uh, we don't know, right? We don't know. We're working. We're working that way, but
There's
whatever
a
it is
theory
this.
out there. There's a theory that um, I mean, you have the simulation theory, and then the energy theory that like all we are is our energy, and when we die our energy gets dispersed into the back into the universe, and we don't know from there.
Well, I think in a sense that's almost indisputable. We are made up of energy and matter,
Yeah.
and nobody fully understands why that energy and matter combines into us, ourselves, and delivers consciousness. And when we die physically, that energy and matter do scatter, and we don't know. So I think what you said
Yeah.
isn't, I mean, I think. I think that's actually kind of understood and known, and people have traditions and beliefs around what
Mm-hmm.
happens, but we don't know. And so um, that is that is my humble approach to the universe, right? I don't know, and I'm okay not knowing, but I'm still curious.
Yeah.
So I think it's a fair observation.
And that's what I want. That's that's a new part of my mission that I want people to realize, that to just stay curious, you know?
Yeah.
Stay curious. Don't just live life unconsciously, subconsciously, and just to stay curious.
Yeah. Well, and all we can offer is an invitation, right?
Mhm.
An invitation to be curious and model staying curious, right? Part of your
Mhm.
leadership journey is to inspire others to be curious. You've looked within yourself, you found this value, you found this intention, and now you want to create impact through it. But it's still only something that we can model. It's still something that we
Yeah.
can invite, but you're doing exactly that with the work that you're doing on this podcast, right? This is the process of leadership, what you're doing. This is the process of turning your best intention into impact. And in this case, your best intention is to invite others to be curious.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love the conversation we're having right now, and I think it'll whoever listens, I think it'll really resonate with them.
Oh, good.
But I have a final question,
Final
and
question. I knew there was another one lurking. Thomas, you're sneaky like that. All right. What's your final question?
yeah, my final question is just: are there any last personal insights on your journey of discovering yourself that you think would resonate?
Yeah, this is the one that I most often share. Be comfortable being with yourself. Be comfortable, preferably in nature if it's available to you. But it is, and I get caught up in this too. It's difficult to put down the phone. It's difficult to close the laptop. It's difficult to separate ourselves from our Apple Watch or other devices prevent us from being alone. But I would invite anybody to be to step into the boredom, step into the discomfort of boredom, step into the discomfort of just being alone without having to distract yourself. Because when you're
Mm-hmm.
alone, that's when you're able to really connect with yourself. And connecting with yourself is, as I shared earlier, I believe the first step in leadership. So even if it's for initially short periods a day. Like I am going to put my phone down, I'm going to close my laptop, I'm going to take out my Apple Watch, and I'm just going to be alone with myself for 10 days. It can be meditative, it doesn't have to be meditative. I like to hike, take walks in nature. When I do that, I like to touch things. I like to touch the trees. I like to feel the grass so that I feel
Yeah,
connected to the
it's
natural things
grounding.
around me. It is
Mm-hmm.
grounding. I like to feel my feet on the ground quite literally as I'm doing it, like just like, oh,
Yeah,
or listen. I spend time sometimes
I
just
know
listening for my
exactly what you mean.
footsteps.
Yeah,
So be okay. Disconnecting is what I would offer. Be okay being bored. Like our kind of often our most powerful selves emerge from the boredom, but if we never allow ourselves to be bored, then that can't happen.
no, I 100% agree. I even made a short about that, that sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. Literally. Like, just go outside and stare at the sky or something. Like,
To just be.
there's something,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's something clarifying and peaceful about it.
I think it's really important. I truly believe that.
But thank you, man. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for the great conversation. Walt Morgan, everyone. Where do you want to be followed, or where do you want people to go?
Oh yeah, so I'm not on social media at all. That's not how I
Okay,
operate. But I do have a
that's
website
good.
if you want to, that's a start, right? If you want to contact me, my website is tliftcoaching.com. That's the letter T, Lift coaching.com. There's a contact button there that'll get you through to me. You can find me on LinkedIn too. I do at least have that level of presence,
Social.
Walt Morgan on LinkedIn, but
Yeah,
otherwise I have no social media presence. I am just here to serve people on their one-on-one journeys when they're ready to take that step to transformation. I am honored to be your partner in that journey. So if that's where you are in your journey, please reach out and love to have that conversation and explore that possibility with you.
thank you, man. Thank you again, and everyone, go check him out on LinkedIn or his website, and uh, give a rating and review. Tell us how you thought about this episode, and share any insights you have so we can spread this community and make an impact.
Thanks for allowing me to be here today, Thomas, and thank you for your service to our Constitution and to be part of that experience as well.
Appreciate it, man.